5.1 Personal coordination or by official representative. Personal coordination or by official representative team leader STL of local police units operating outside their territorial jurisdiction and national support units NSUs shall coordinate personally or through an official representative with the police regional, provincial or city police office within whose jurisdiction the operation is to be conducted. As a team leader, you must coordinate with another place when you are going to carry out an operation because that is no longer your jurisdiction or coverage. 5.2 Personal coordination or by official representative. Coordination by filing. Coordination form. Prior to the launching of the operation, except in cases where the formal, in writing, inter-unit coordination cannot be made due to the nature and/or urgency of the situation, such as, but not limited to, cross-jurisdictional pursuit operations. Coordination should be made formally using the prescribed coordination form, which shall be filed with the concerned operations center of the police regional, provincial, or city office. Annex A, Coordination Form. You must first coordinate where you will perform the operation, except if you catch a criminal and go in hot pursuit. You don't have to coordinate before catching the criminal. You have to catch him first, before you coordinate who occupies the area to prevent the criminal from escaping. 5.3 Coordination by practical, much available means of communication cases. Cases where formal inter-unit coordination is not feasible, the police unit concerned shall endeavor to notify the territorial police office through any practical available means of communication at any time during the operation and, if not possible, shall accomplish and furnish the territorial police office a written incident report immediately after the termination of the operation. If you conducted an operation and at the end of the operation you need to report to the police station to coordinate and for them to know that you conducted an operation in their jurisdiction. 6.1 Basic requirements. Basic requirements. Police operations like arrest, search and seizure, checkpoint, roadblocks, demolition, and civil disturbance management shall be conducted as follows. A. With a marked police vehicle. B. Led by a police-commissioned officer, PCO. And C. With personnel in prescribed police uniform or attire. If you conduct an arrest warrant or search and seizure, you need basic requirements. Police attire to know that you are a marked police vehicle for a vehicle to be used in the operation. Roadblock if you have a car that the criminal is chasing. 6.2 Use of megaphones and similar instruments. During actual police intervention operations, the team leader shall use peaceful means, including the use of megaphones or any other similar instruments to warn or influence the offenders or suspect US to stop and/or peacefully give up. If the suspect has a hostage, you need to negotiate by using a megaphone to avoid the use of force and to clarify what you say so that the suspect does not panic. 6.3 Wearing shots prohibited. The police shall not use warning shots during police intervention operations. Not every time you use a warning shot because not all suspects have a gun. You need one just in case there are civilians in the area to avoid accidents to others. The warning shot is only used when the suspect is a high profile. 7.1 Use of excessive force prohibited. Excessive use of force during police operation is prohibited. However, in the lawful performance of duty, a police officer may use necessary force to accomplish his mandated tasks of enforcing the law and maintaining peace and order. This is what is called reasonable force. For example, when you arrest a suspect, when he is fighting, you can use force to arrest the suspect. Then, when someone grabs your gun with the first shot, consider it as a warning shot. 7.2 Issuance of verbal warning. The police officer must first issue a verbal warning before he could use force against an offender. As far as practicable, the verbal warning shall be in the dialect that is known to the offender or in the national language. Basically, the verbal warning shall consist of the following: the police officer identifying himself, his intention, and what he wants the offender to do. If the offender is a foreigner, the verbal warning shall be done in the English language, followed by a demonstrative act of the police officer's intent. The verbal warning shall be done in a loud and dear manner. Before you arrest the suspect, you will say that he has violated the law, and you will introduce yourself as a law enforcement officer. What language the suspect speaks is also the language that you will tell him so that he can understand clearly. This is during Miranda, right? 7.3 Non-issuance of verbal warning. When excusable. The failure to issue a verbal warning is excusable in cases where threat to life or property is already imminent and there is no other option but to use force to subdue the offender. You will use the Miranda warning when you have arrested the suspect, not while you are firing a gun or while fighting. You also need to secure it yourself to avoid the danger of life. 7.4 Use of non-lethal weapon. When suspect is violent or threatening and that less physical measures have been tried and deemed inappropriate, a more extreme but non-deadly measure can be used, such baton, truncheon, pepper spray, as stun gun and other non-lethal weapon to bring the suspect under control or effect an arrest. This is the non-lethal weapon that should be used, such as a baton, truncheon, pepper spray, if the suspect does not have firearms. 7.5 Application of necessary and reasonable force. During confrontation with an armed offender, only such necessary and reasonable force should be applied as would be sufficient to overcome the resistance put up by the offender, subdue the clear and imminent danger posed by him, or to justify the force act under the principles of self-defense, defense of relative, or defense of stranger. The police can use a gun under this principle. It depends on the self, the relative, the stranger. As long as is what we called imminent danger, we can use violence to the suspect. 7.6 Factors to consider in the reasonableness of the force employed. A police officer, however, is not required to afford offender S attacking him the opportunity for a fair or equal struggle. The reasonableness of the force employed will depend upon the number of aggressors, nature and characteristic of the weapon used, physical condition, size and other circumstances, to include the place and occasion of the assault. The police officer is given the sound discretion to consider these factors in employing reasonable force. When there are many suspects, you can use firearms, but it still depends on the situation, as long as you know that there is imminent danger contained in the revised penal code, that self-depends, depends of relative, depends of stranger. 7. Responsibility of the police officer in charge of the operation. The police officer who is in charge of the operation shall at all times exercise control over all police personnel in the area of operation and shall exhaust all possible means to apply the necessary and reasonable force to protect lives and properties during armed confrontation. You have to protect life, not only the victim, but also the suspect. Depending on the situation, a police officer should be in control of the situation and have a command. To follow, you have to use force if necessary to protect property, protect life, and others if necessary. 8.1 Use of firearm. When justified. The use of firearm is justified if the offender poses imminent danger of causing death or injury to the police officer or other persons. The use of a firearm is also justified under the doctrines of self-defense, defense of a relative, and defense of a stranger. However, one who resorts to self-defense must face a real threat on his life, and the peril sought to be avoided must be actual, imminent, and real. Unlawful aggression should be present for self-defense to be considered as a justifying circumstance. When you know that the suspect is carrying a gun, or when you know that you are going to be shot, do it first for your own sake and that of others, depending on the situation. 8.2. Firing at moving vehicles prohibited, but with exceptions. A moving vehicle shall not be fired upon except when its occupants pose imminent danger of causing death or injury to the police officer or any other person, and that the use of firearm does not create a danger to the public and outweighs the likely benefits of its non-use. When the suspects are riding in the car and are shooting with the police should shoot the side of the car or the tire to avoid an accident to the civilian who will be hit. 8.3 parameters to be considered in firing at moving vehicles. In firing at a moving vehicle, the following parameters should be considered. A. The intent of the suspects to harm the police officer or other persons. B. The capability of the suspects to harm with certainty the police officer or other persons. And C. Accessibility or the proximity of the suspects from the police officer and other persons. That is what they call a danger of life, that you must consider for the safety of the people around you who will not be affected while arresting the suspect. 8.4 Filing of an incident report. After the use of firearm, a police officer who fires his service firearm or weapon during a confrontation with an offender or offenders must submit an incident report outlining the circumstances necessitating the use of his firearm. Every time you use your gun on the suspect and others, you have to report that accident. 8.5 Procedures. After an armed confrontation. Immediately after an armed confrontation, the officer who is in charge of the operation shall A. Secure the site of confrontation. B. Take photographs. C. Check whether the situation still poses imminent danger. D. Evacuate the wounded to the nearest hospital. E. Ensure that all persons who died on the spot are not moved from their original position. F. Arrested suspects should be kept in isolation. G. Conduct debriefing on all involved PNP operatives. H. Submit after operations report. And I. Ensure psychological stress counseling for all involved PNP operatives.